Hi, my name is Jess Baugh, and I'm a fourth-year dental student here at UNE. Here's a photo of me, age 25, taken for the clinical exam I took last weekend. One of the many countless tests required in obtaining my DMD degree. This program has helped me identify my strengths and limitations and made me realize the type of provider that I desire to be. Let me turn your attention to the inaugural class of 2017. This photo was taken 3 years ago during our white coat ceremony. We are pioneers of our program, working together with faculty on a level that is not reached at most universities. I do not feel like I'm treated like a student in clinic. Instead, I feel like I'm treated as a colleague. During undergrad, I was an art minor, and I continued to create artwork throughout my dental school career. While entering the program, 30 to 40 hours a week was dedicated to my education. I soon began to do nothing more than eat, sleep, and breathe dental school. Art became my therapy. This new lifestyle I was living, it became clear to me that I was not pain-free. I started to develop tendonitis in my right hand. Back and neck pain followed. Because of my poor posture, my height, nothing fit my size. I'm constantly studying. I'm looking down at my phone. And with stress and anxiety comes pain. It triggers my asthma. My doctor told me I got used to not fully breathing all the time. Here's a flashback of me as a first-year dental student, practicing after hours in sim clinic. Unfortunately, at the time, I did not know that I was causing my own back and neck pain. I was unaware that my loops that were made were too short. So it forced me to lean forward during treatment just to see. And that took about 3 years to figure that out. And by then, the damage was already done. Despite all that, I do not consider myself weak. In me, I find confidence and strength. But that does not mean I did not struggle. Anxiety can get you feeling physically sick. The pressure, the need to be perfect can be overwhelming. You may doubt yourself, but understand that no one is born an expert because through experience, we obtain knowledge. Last September, art professor Alex Rowe and curator Dorothy Royal contacted me with an invitation to collaborate on an art project for a faculty exhibit called Wonder. This opportunity had opened the door to an array of possibilities, and together with my classmate and sister, Rydia Daftery, our project, Compassionate Touch, began. On October 31st, we all met up at a local coffee shop, Black Cat, and shared each other our own personal stories and insight. We discussed topics about pain, anxiety, post-traumatic experiences, and their effects on dental care. The truth is, delayed dental care can gradually worsen the condition, cause pain, and ultimately higher treatment costs. In dentistry, it's not always black and white, but a large sea of gray. We can agree that there's a lesion is present, but how you treat the lesion is what sets us apart. It's the art of dentistry. With every experience, I am able to obtain wisdom, and with that wisdom, I'm able to form my own conclusions and incorporate them into my practices. With that idea, we gathered together, faculty and students, in order to create a film called Compassionate Touch. The film highlights the 5 stages of managing the highly fearful patient before, during, and after their visit to the dentist. The film features all original footage, music, artwork created by the UNE community and supported by IPEC. This is Dr. David Peer. He is one of our beloved clinical professors featured in the film. Along with practicing at Mount Pleasant Dental Care in Rockport, Dr. Peer teaches courses across the U.S. on communication skills, serving the highly fearful patient and leadership in the dental office. And for our project, he played a key role in identifying and expanding on the 5 stages. During winter break, I spent time creating the artwork and music for the film. Initially, the 5 paintings I created functioned as big ink stamps. To create them, linoleum was attached to about 5 12 by 24 wood panels and then carved into them. In order to generate a series of linocut prints, ink was then rolled onto them and then the panels were pressed onto paper. After I made several linocut prints, I painted over them in acrylic. Now, before I continue to talk more about the actual project, I wanted to step back and mention that I personally do not have any dental anxieties, but I do experience my own personal anxieties. Throughout the years, I've learned that everyone copes with stress and anxiety differently. It doesn't mean that their way is right or wrong, it's just different. Currently, 80% of adults in the US are apprehensive about dental treatment. 20 of these adults are highly anxious, seeking care only when it's absolutely necessary. About 5% avoid dental treatment altogether. This behavior can prevent people from getting the care that they desperately need. The first panel is called Listen to Identify. Illustrated here is a person crippled by anxiety. The cause of their suffering may not always be apparent, and the underlying issue may not always be known. But some For some, it could be the needle. In others, it could be the noise of the drill. As healthcare providers, we need to listen in order to identify and better treat our patients. Validation. I want my patients to know that it's okay to feel this way. In dentistry, patients are reclined in a vulnerable position. There's this inability to truly understand what they are experiencing in their mouths, sometimes painful, most of the time a new experience. To ensure a smooth interaction, there must be trust and understanding. And I've come to learn that everyone has a story. This represents the anxious patient, discovering and revealing what his or her story truly is. As they unravel themselves and reveal themselves to the doctor, some of the anxiety begin to dissipate. The patient is still constricted, but lessening, as their relationship undergoes a deeper level of communication and bond. Not alone. In this painting, the doctor is underneath the patient. Lowering oneself gives the other the position of power and confidence to open up. When the patient shares their story, their doctor listens and responds with empathy. I want you to know that you are not alone. The flowing movements of color correlate with the continued lessening of fear and anxiety. We move on to the compassionate touch. Here, the doctor and the patient are depicted on the same level as equals, joining hands in agreement and trust. The colors flow in harmony with this new mutual understanding of anxieties and boundaries now need to respect. The dentist can now move forward and proceed with treatment. Today, I'm still living with pain, but my happiness is intertwined with my outlook in life. In order to move forward, there must be a discussion and a desire for self-reflection and improvement. In the clinic, I do not work with patients. I work with people. We are all merely human beings, fragile and strong, all at the same time.
I love it here in Maine for all its natural beauty, incredible food, and stellar beer. I like to share that on social media often, to the point where my out-of-state friends are posting to my wall about it. I am the city administrator in Saco, and I took the job here to help make these communities in southern Maine the best places to live. I moved here from a place that gave me that sense of belonging, like I was part of a community. Meet June. When not focused on work, I enjoy working on old Volkswagens. I also hike, run, bike, climb, camp, and kayak. I enjoy watching the sunrise and set. I like to renovate houses. I foster, train, and socialize dogs. I love good food, engaging conversation, and genuinely kind people. These are the things I might say when I meet someone new. They are truly who I am. This is Preston. He's what gets me around the state to experience its natural beauty. The next set of photos are a part of that journey thanks to him. Where was I? When I meet someone new, I tell them about the stuff from the slide before. But what I'm about to share with you might be difficult for me, and it's the first time I'm opening up like this. This is me. I've just arrived at the top of Monument Mountain in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. Did you know that in 1850, Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville picnicked on that mountain? A thunderstorm forced them into a cave where they discussed ideas for Melville's novel, Moby Dick. I got sidetracked, sorry. This is a story about what's behind my backpack, my back. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called myxopapillary ependymoma. Yeah, that's a weird word. I only know how to spell it because I was fascinated by the sound of it that I had to learn. This form of cancer is found within the cerebral spinal fluid. When I was diagnosed, there were under 100 known cases. No one knew how it got there or why, but it had to come out or it would eventually paralyze and kill me. Can you pause it or anything? This all happened just before my senior year in high school, a time when I was finally growing taller, was really into girls, and had a sweet ride that I was restoring. Remember June? Yeah, the bug? Her. Anyway, they operated 2 times, 3 separate incisions that fall. Then they radiated the spine and brain for 3 months. I spent the first half of my senior year at home with a tutor. I was in and out of school the second half of the year because the school chairs were unbearable, and I was in a lot of pain. My neurosurgeon was so focused on the laminectomy and removal procedures and the oncologist on making sure it wasn't going to reoccur, they really forgot to take care of the physical therapy. I was too young to know any better, and my parents struggled to understand why their son had to go through with this. 2 years later in college, I was determined there was still more foreign bodies that had to be removed, another set of surgeries and a year of chemotherapy and no proper physical therapy. At this point, I should have known better. While it's still been more than 10 years since all of this, I now suffer from extreme kyphosis and am in constant pain that is hard to describe. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy to be alive. I believe the doctor's #1 goal was to save my life, and I'm eternally grateful. I just wish there had been another step that focused on getting me back to close to as 100% as possible. There are things in my life I have to avoid or do differently because of it. I think this presentation style allows me to briefly showcase some of those. I do not like to see doctors. I know that is the case for a lot of people, but for years I had to have an MRI every 3 months, then it was every 6 months, then annually. Each time a 3-hour process lying completely still in a narrow tunnel. Fortunately for me, I'm very healthy, aside from back pain and having had cancer, and never have to go to the doctor. I still don't even have a primary care physician. I work very hard, and given the chance to be interviewed, I've always obtained the job. I have a great track record of work accomplishments and solid references. Even though an interview team could never ask me about my health, I have this fear I'll slip and say something about this pre-existing condition. Earlier in my career, the question, what's the biggest challenge you've had to overcome? That could have been a disaster for me. Now I've got plenty of work examples, so I'm not worried. I mentioned before my appreciation for a good beer. I used to brew my own in the early 2000s when the stocked options were all terrible. Then at some point the number and quality of breweries started to increase. I traveled to great locations to meet the masters and sit on a bar stool with no back or support. I'd suffer while keeping a smile on my face. I try to avoid bar stools now, but they're so inexpensive for these small breweries, they all use them. Our community high school football team is the Thornton Academy Trojans. Woohoo, last year they were the state champions. Most people will complain about the cold of the metal bleachers, and I might too, but my biggest complaint is the lack of support for my back. When I first moved here last fall, I went to one game. The Trojans lost that game, the only one of the season. So I've used that as my excuse not to attend another one. In middle school and high school, the annual trip was to one of the nearby amusement parks. I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, and roller coasters are really my favorite. Aside from daily recess and math class, I know I'm a total nerd, adding this annual event was a highlight of the school year. I really love to go on roller coasters more. I'd really love to go on coasters more in the future, but I struggle with standing in line for a long time. The pressure on my knees and pain in my thoracic spine take away from the enjoyment. Growing up, the family went to the great New York State Fair every year, experienced my first concert there, saw the butter sculpture, drank a cup of milk for 25 cents, ate fried dough. Since surgery, I've always struggled standing or walking slowly through the crowds. Community fairs and festivals are a big part of Maine. I've heard great things about a bunch of different ones. I plan to go, but only for an hour or two when I feel like I can manage the pain afterwards. I present often to council, lobby in front of the state legislative committee, at conferences, a classroom full of students. And here I stand tonight. I mentioned how I do with standing around. But fortunately for me, the adrenaline and the emotions are holding back the pain, and I won't feel it until later this evening. I mention all this not to complain, because I don't complain about pain, but to hopefully help others understand how someone might modify their life choices based on that pain. I am healthy enough to kayak, which, wow, I went so fast, I've already gotten ahead of myself. Okay. I am healthy enough to kayak with additional back support. I still enjoy riding a road bike, but I can't go as far as I could when I was in high school. And 20 years later, they still haven't figured out how to design a comfortable seat. So there is that. Hiking, mountains, and road climbing are probably my two favorite activities. I think it's because reaching the top is a challenge that has a definable goal attached to it. There was a great article in MaineToday.com, 26 of Maine's most beautiful places. I've done 17 of them and will complete 21 before the one-year point of my first trek. But this photo right here on the Saco River, incredible natural and man-made beauty in our backyard. I am lucky I have the physical strength and enough flexibility to continue to participate in these activities. Cato, I'm sure one day I won't be able to, and I'll find other exciting opportunities to keep my mind active. I mentioned before how I foster and care for dogs. This is Cato. He's been my hiking buddy since the spring. Having him around always lifts my spirits and definitely takes any pain away. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth. I struggle with POTS syndrome. I'll tell you more about that later, but first I'd like to begin my talk showing a picture of me as a little girl. I was healthy and happy and well-rounded. I loved to dance. I loved to play sports. I had a very normal and happy childhood, so that's me. Until one day on the ski slope, I dropped. I passed out for no apparent reason. And it was actually kind of great because there's a group of British men who are really attractive that picked me up and carried me off the slope. But other than that, it was terrifying. It was my first indication that something wasn't quite right going on in my body just because I dropped for no apparent reason. And this is how I ended up every day after that. I started fainting 9 to 10 times a day. I would black out for 7 to 8 hours at a time. I was completely unconscious. And this is actually me on a family vacation in our rental home. That's how I spent my vacation, is just curled up in fetal position. And these days turned into weeks, which turned into months, which turned into years of me curled up alone on the couch with my dogs. Completely alone, not going to school, not participating in my sports. I didn't know what to do other than just sleep with my dogs on the couch. And I tried to go get medical help, but nobody had any answers for me. They just told me that I had low blood pressure, and that was all. And that was terrifying. I would faint so many times a day, so I ended up in the emergency room a couple times a week. And they would just give me an IV treatment and then send me on my way. But the good thing about that treatment is that it gave me relief for 2 hours at a time. And so for 2 hours, I felt well and I was conscious. So I had IV treatment at home on my couch with my dogs. And the sad thing about that is that after the 2 hours, I'd be right back at square one, passing out, blacking out. Once again, passing out on my dogs all alone. And no doctors had any answers for me as to why I was fainting so frequently. And I was not attending school. Once again, I was not playing any of my sports. I was just passed out alone. And that IV treatment caused me to gain 45 pounds as a sophomore in high school. You can see my face completely puffed up. And I was a guinea pig. I was put on different steroids. You can see acne scars on my cheeks because I would react to different steroids. They didn't know what to do with me. So they just tried different medications, and one day I was diagnosed with POTS syndrome, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and not that type of POTS, and I don't do pot, but I have POTS, and I learned that that is a form of autonomic dysfunction that causes people to faint out multiple times a day. So at least I had that answer, and with that answer, I found out about a program at the Mayo Clinic, the Pediatric Pain Rehabilitation Center in Rochester, Minnesota. So my mom and I called up, and we were immediately let into the program. So we packed up our bags, left our family, and moved into a hotel in the middle of Rochester, Minnesota. And at the Mayo Clinic, I met people. All these people were exactly like me. They would pass out randomly. And although it may seem weird, it was extremely comforting because I'd be walking down the hall and they just drop. And I felt, finally I felt at home with all these people who were sick just like me. So that was absolutely incredible, and I'm so thankful to have met sick people just like me. And why the Mayo Clinic worked for me is because there were a team of interprofessional healthcare providers who all worked together and knew my case specifically. So each day I went to PT, OT, nutrition, biofeedback therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and every physician knew my case so specifically under one roof in one wing of the hospital. They knew me. And this is me on my 17th birthday at the Mayo Clinic. A lot of those girls walked in on canes and in wheelchairs. And by the end of our 3 weeks, we were up, standing upright, we had color, we were able to smile. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And these girls had the same illness just like me. And at the Mayo Clinic, they explained to me what autonomic dysfunction is and why I faint so much. My sympathetic nervous system is constantly in fight or flight because I'm fighting off these fainting spells. And to be a healthy individual, you need to have a balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. And I just wasn't getting that. My sympathetic system was constantly being overused. And also, on Thursdays, they made us have Look Good, Feel Good Thursdays so we could strengthen our positive neural pathways to believe that we are well and we are good. And so this is me dressed up on my graduation day. I gave a speech that day at the end of my month-long treatment, and I was upright and I was well. I truly was well. And after that, I never missed a day of working out. I went from sleeping on the couch with my dogs to walking my dogs. And since then, I have not missed a day of working out. I've been in school full-time, working, doing everything that brings me joy and everything that I really should be doing as a 19-year-old girl. And this was just a couple months after I graduated from the Mayo Clinic. I was asked to prom, and that was incredible. I was back in school, and people didn't forget about me. They still knew who I was. That was one of the happiest days, besides from the British men picking me up. That was absolutely incredible. And then I was asked to prom again, and by that time, I was a senior in high school, and I had completed all 4 years of high school that year. And I was able to graduate in that spring with my class, as I should have normally been able to do. So that was absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. So happy. And somehow I managed to get a boyfriend who wasn't afraid of me passing out, and he took me skiing. So this past year, I went skiing, and that was amazing because I was upright and I didn't fall on the mountain. I was able to keep conscious because I had strengthened my blood vessels to be strong and able to do exactly what I wanted to do, like skiing. And this is me today, upright, attending school, healthy and happy, doing everything that I want to be doing. And I truly strive to be an image of hope for those who are losing their own. So that's where I am today.
This is me in 1994. I know what you're thinking. I started drinking that early. Not true. It's just a picture. My dad and his friends photographed people posing with these 2 Hallenstein beers all over the country, maybe the world. Ironic that 12 years later, this would become the most important part of my life. I had a great childhood. I was full of joy and energy. I had a tremendous amount of love. I felt love, and I expressed love. I was fully confident being me. Look, I proudly wore my name on my shirt. At some point, that all changed. Change! On the outside, everything seemed right. Good grades, good family, good friends, athletic, cool, calm demeanor. On the inside, though, I felt disconnected. And I didn't quite fit in among my peers, and I started going through life trying to hide. The pressures of life increased, and I wasn't quite sure how to deal with any of it. Things began to really gnaw at me. I didn't know why I had these feelings at all, but they just lived within me. My adolescence was like a turtle. That was actually a fun night. That was prom, but the more insecure I became, the more I retreated into my shell. The more I retreated, the more it seemed like no one cared about me at all. I viewed the world as a very dark, lonely, angry place. And without knowing how to express myself, I just assumed that the reason no one liked me was because of me. I felt angry all the time. I really wanted the pain to stop. I was hoping firefighters would come in, but no one did. Despite the inner conflict, I had hopes, dreams, and aspirations, just desperately trying to shine through. But my head was so foggy that there was no possible way for it to fully take me out of myself. I thought that life would just suddenly work out. I waited a long time and nothing changed. Eventually, my brain just... I found opiates. I immediately noticed a warm euphoria flood my body. My head was suddenly clear. I knew that I wanted to feel this way forever. Ah, relief. And just like here in Flying in Zero Gravity, I felt weightless and felt like I could just totally float and be free. I was confident again and no longer needed to hide. In fact, I often felt on top of the world. I began to break into houses, fueled by adrenaline and this feeling of invincibility, and it gave me more power than I ever dreamed. But also, feeling like the world owed me for all the suffering I had, I thought that it was within my right to do all these things. So I continued. I just walked a mile in my own shoes, and I still don't understand shit. At 19 years old in 2009, I was facing felony convictions. The drugs had stopped working. My sister thought I honestly didn't love her anymore, and I wanted to die. At 19 years old, I was far too young to be this miserable. I entered recovery. I met a man, Father Bill, who told me that you'll make the world a better place. And that's become one of my mottos because it spoke to me so much, even though I didn't fully understand what it meant. But I share that often because I wholeheartedly believe that people in recovery are amazing and anyone should be given that shot. Piper always noticed when things were wrong, and she looked at me with these hopeful, inquisitive eyes, and there were others that noticed too. But one in particular, former teacher, said, "Matt, I knew you were struggling, but I just didn't know how to help you." And I just looked at him and said, "I wished you had done anything. Just honored my pain, just let me know you were there, and that you cared." I began to work through the fears, frustrations, and insecurities. I was healing. Life honestly got good very quick, and I honestly felt like that fortune cookie was true. Sadly, that's, I was in for a rude awakening, because after all, I'm a human. Some days seem perfect inside and out. Sadly, not every day is like that. Some days really suck. Dark, cold, up there. No one wanted to come and rescue me up there. And I'm like, what is going on? Isn't my 2-hour shift up yet? Those are the days I learned I grow the most. Perspective plays a huge role too, and by having an attitude shift, sometimes you can make the best of a bad situation. I used to delude that life was just going to come back to me and say, "Matt, I'm sorry, I forgot about you. Surprise, here's everything you ever wanted." Sadly, that's just a delusion and not at all how life works. I needed to start taking action, and I learned that I needed to seek out the things I wanted. It's easy to forget that there's so much beauty around. I saw the green flash, which I'd never seen before, and it was really beautiful. And had I blinked, or had I gotten caught up in life, I would have missed it. I learned that by staying fully present in the moment, whatever I'm doing, bad or good, that I enjoyed those things much, much more. Because I hadn't loved myself growing up, I wasn't able to feel anyone else's love. And my sister was right. I was cold. I was unable to express love because I hated myself. It took a long time for my sister and I to heal and for her to trust that I was capable of loving her again. She has this amazing gift of causing us to burst out in laughter. I promise, under the rug. That really is where all this stuff goes. And it's almost laughable that I tried to sweep things under the rug and think that they would just go away by me not dealing with them. It's a huge relief to know that I don't have to run anymore. Courage means to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. That's recovery at its essence. While it's scary sometimes to open up to the world, doing so is a necessary part of finding, accepting, and truly loving who I am. Being in my heart has been way easier than being in my head. My feelings of disconnect have gone away, but sometimes I still feel this deep inner spiritual pain, and last night was one of them. And I didn't want to give this talk, and I was utterly discouraged and lost in my head and feeling lots of stress. And I reached out to a friend, and we didn't talk long, but he always knew how to pull me out of me. And he just said, "I love you, Matt, and you're perfect just the way you are." Back then, I used many masks to hide my emotions, and today the masks signify that I don't have to take myself so seriously anymore. The process of recovery was just like rediscovering my inner child, and today I'm comfortable being me, just like when I wore my name on my shirt.
So my name is Andrew Kazulis, and I am a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me, first and foremost, is that my mom has her son back. But mom is not the only one that benefits. I'm also an uncle to an incredible niece. I plugged into this thing called hope, and I'm hopeful. I plugged into this thing called change, and I'm changing. I plugged into this thing called growth, and I'm growing. But it certainly, like Matt said, was not always that way. This is my brain as a child, full of all kinds of confusion and calamity and post-traumatic stress and anxiety. And this was quite literally my inner dialogue at almost all times. When faced with an external issue, this is quite literally what my brain would go to. And please, if anybody can make any sense of this, let me know. Do I hit the okay? Wait, I don't want a client not to. Wait, can I go back? How do I go back? I don't know what to do right now. And I felt like I was so close to understanding something, but I couldn't. And I just had this inner monologue that kept going and going and going, saying, I can't, I won't, I'll never. And I felt totally disconnected from everything, like Matt said. I felt like I was reaching for something, and I was stuck. I just couldn't get to that plug. And I'd see others around me reaching that plug and plugging into this thing just fine, with no problems. But I just couldn't reach it, and I found the thing that extended my cord, and that was drugs and alcohol. They quite literally enabled me to do things that I thought totally impossible. They were my breath. They allowed me to breathe. And the curious thing, this is a three-dimensional map of the inner workings of the lungs. The curious thing about them is that you can quite literally breathe in hope. And I felt that hope, and it's interesting, these slides got screwed up. I changed this around. But it's a curious thing that the trees actually, if you flip over the 3D map of the lungs, the trees actually exhale hope. And a very interesting thing about the exhale is that it quite literally comes from the Sanskrit word that defines nirvana. To exhale, to let go. And that's what I did. Come to find out that nature has done these incredible things for us, including explaining to us, helping us understand that opposites are complementary. Success and failure don't go in opposite directions. Indeed, they tend in the same direction. You cannot have one without the other, and you cannot go into one without the other. Interestingly enough, the universe is set up in the same way. Your inner workings and the outer workings very closely mimic each other. And so I challenge you to take a look and see the similarities of how the inner and the outer, the self and the other, and the hard and fast division that we often hold so tightly to melts away. Here we have an eye, human eye, quite literally trillions of atoms and millions of photoreceptor cells that make up the human eye. All of those atoms were forged at the center of a star. And this is a supernova here, the destruction of the star, that quite literally the atoms from are now being utilized to capture that same process. And this is an incredible idea. And I wish I could just reach out, right? Take this idea and plant it right in someone else's head. And I wish someone had done that with me when I was growing up. But we can't. How do we do that? Can we just quite literally plop an idea in someone's head? No, we can't. What we can do is use words. And that's what we do. And let me be very clear, the words are the vessels of ideas. Ideas are quite literally the most deadliest thing on this planet. All the drugs combined don't even come close to the deadly nature of the power of the idea. And, oh yeah, wow, this really got twisted back up. Ideas also, and words also, carry with them the incredible power to re-energize, to empower, to embrace, to connect, to quite literally take two peoples and connect them, bring them together in some incredibly meaningful ways, and Sigmund Freud talks to those. This here is quite literally a tangible representation of my inner dialogue presently. This is a word cloud made from Facebook, so do take it with a grain of salt. But this is quite literally my inner workings now, or the majority of it. And it's really incredible to see that I can do it. I can do it. And this is one of the other inner dialogues now. Instead of coming to that Steam client not, it's now, wait, no, Steam client can. And what else can I do? What else is possible? What else is out there? What else can I grab a hold of and breathe and feel that breath and be inspired by? Going back to college, this is quite literally me in front of the Chem 113 class doing a chemistry club demo. If you told me 4 years ago when I was sitting in Melrose, Mass, trying to take my own life using heroin, I would have called you completely insane. I would have said that's someone else's dream. I don't dare to dream that big. I don't dare to dream about the Rockies. And here's Matt and I doing some incredible advocacy work in Colorado, something that recovery has given me the ability to use my voice to help people, to people who haven't found their voice yet or are convinced that their voice doesn't matter. It does. You have that power in the palm of your hands. You can own that. You can help someone else see that in themselves. You can inspire. You can find your passion as I did. And guess what I get to do for the rest of my life? I get to dance. Because I have found the thing that makes me sing. I have found the thing that moves me deeply, internally, and connects me to the rest of everything and the rest of you. And I urge you all, ask yourself, what makes you dance? Thank you very much.